and we'll do it live. We'll do it live. All right. So the question today is, whose agenda is it really? Whose agenda is this? Whose agenda is this? We're talking about the Jesuits. I'm talking about the Jesuits. Nobody else is talking about the Jesuits. There's a few people talking about the Jesuits, but a lot of their information is kind of lame, actually, because they're like, Hitler was a Jesuit, and then the Jesuits tried to kill Hitler, because he wasn't a Jesuit. But I'll tell you who was a Jesuit. Karl Marx was a Jesuit. And you have to understand that the Pope right now controls the left in America. The Pope controls the workers' unions. The AFL-CIO is controlled by Rome. The AFL-CIO is controlled by Rome, by the Roman Church. They control Rome. You're thinking, what are you talking about? That was years ago. The Roman Catholic Church has been dead for years. No, it hasn't. Your king has been dead for years. The King of England has been dead for years. The King of France has been dead for years. Rome is still there. The Pope is still there. The Jesuit order was reestablished in 1814, 1815? So the Jesuit order is still there. In fact, the Jesuit order spans all across America and around the world, and they all serve the Pope. And the Pope has a thing called Black Lives Matter. And the Pope has a little thing called Antifa. That's where Antifa gets its backing from. It gets its backing from the Pope. The Pope has a little thing called Washington, D.C. The Pope has a little thing called the CIA. The Pope has a little thing called the CIA. The Pope has a little thing called Washington, D.C. and the U.S. military and the Pentagon. You think that belongs to Trump? Then why did Mike Waltz just try to sabotage him? And Mike Waltz is a big Pentagon guy. He's a big Army guy. He's a Green Beret. Okay, let me slow down here. Let me slow down. I've been listening to the left a lot. I've been listening to Jimmy Dore. I've been listening to Scott Ritter. I've been listening to Danny Haifong. I've been listening to Judge Napolitano. And that whole gang, there's all kinds of people associated with them. It's like a big association they're not just leftists, they're communists. So there's an association of communists on the left. It's what's that guy? Hinkle, Jackson Hinkle. You got Jackson Hinkle, you've got Danny Haifong, you've got Jimmy Dore, and all the people associated with Jimmy Dore, which includes that guy Aaron Mate, and some other Jewish people that are affiliated with Jimmy Dore and the left. And of course, Jimmy Dore worked with that Turk. Who's the Turk? The Young Turks. The Young Turks. What's that guy? Chink Uyghur. The Chink Uyghur guy. Remember that guy? So Jimmy Dore was with them and all that. You got to understand, all that stuff's run by the Pope. I know you don't believe me. I'm going to prove it to you, though. It's all run by the Pope. It's all run by the Pope, because the Pope is the he's like the hub. Rome is the hub of global capitalism. But that's not communism. Yes, it is. It actually is communism, because Karl Marx was a central banking advocate. A central banking advocate. Karl Marx was a central banking advocate. Karl Marx was a Republican. Karl Marx was a Jesuit. Karl Marx was also Jewish. So he was Jewish and he was a Jesuit, and he was an advocate of central banking. Why? I don't know, because I haven't read Das Kapital. Because why would I want to waste my time reading tripe, garbage? Why would I want to waste my time reading that shit? Communist shit. But so what I'm telling you is that Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore, Danny Haifong, I like the reason I was listening to these people in the first place is because they were anti-Ukraine war. And I'm anti-Ukraine war because I'm a white nationalist, Christian, or whatever. See, because I'm pro-European, I'm pro the European races. I'm against the Ukraine war because I don't want to see European people getting slaughtered for an agenda that I don't agree with. And what the agenda looks like to me is the obvious one is that there's a lot of Jewish mafia involved, right? So everybody can see the Jewish mafia, the Kaganovich clan, the previous administration with Victoria Newland Noodleman, Kagan, and Antony Blinken, a Ukrainian Jewish mafia figure running the U.S. State Department. So there's so many of them. And you got Zelensky, and you got Klitschko, and you've got B'nai B'rith, and you've got all the people associated with B'nai B'rith in New York. So it's you've got this big huge Jewish influence. But what people don't often see is that Zelensky was meeting with the Pope. And if you go and you do a Google image search, you'll find that the Pope was meeting with Zelensky, and the Pope was holding up Ukrainian flags. Okay, that's important because the Pope is like the hub of the European Union, which is not European. Because why is it not European? Because it's not for the European races. The European Union does not exist for the benefit of the European races. It exists for the benefit of the global commercial system, which includes communism. Communism is intrinsic to the global commercial capitalist program. You couldn't maintain it without communism because you need the left there to promote all of the interracial, everything. The what do you call it? The interdependency cult. And this may explain why the Vatican invented communism and invented communism with Karl Marx. This may explain why they did it. They had to find a way to fuse everybody together in some gigantic race mixing experiment, which is what America has become, because Washington, D.C. was founded by Rome, was founded by the Jesuits. And you're like, no, it wasn't. That's stupid. This guy's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. It was founded by George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. That's true. But you have to understand that the capital wasn't originally in Washington, D.C. The capital was originally Philadelphia and New York. I think they had some stuff in New York and they had some stuff in Philly. So it was Philadelphia was like a main center, and then New York was the other main center, where New Amsterdam, New York and New York and Philadelphia were I think the two main original centers of power of the new colonial government, which didn't last into the future. The colonial government of George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Paine, Hamilton, Adams, and the rest ended with the Civil War. It ended with the Civil War. And all the stuff that they came up with was then, keyword, progressively eradicated. It was progressively eradicated after or through the means of the Civil War with Abraham Lincoln and the Union Army fighting the Confederates. When the Union Army and the Confederates fought each other in battle and killed each other, that was the end of the colonial government that was established by George Washington and Ben Franklin and the rest, and Adams. Interestingly enough, Adams wrote a book about the crimes of the Jesuits. Adams wrote a book about the crimes of the Jesuits, and I have never read that book, and I've never seen a copy of it, and I don't know that one even exists. And I'm telling you, I highly doubt that the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. would even carry it. Because why would they, when Washington, D.C. was founded by and for the Jesuit order and the Pope? So why would they carry a copy of a book by Adams about how sinister the Jesuit order is? Now you're thinking, well, what does the Jesuit order have to do with me? It's just a bunch of homosexual men in dresses with rainbow flags on their churches. What does that have to do with me? Remember this thing called remember the thing I can't talk about, which is a big virus. Remember the big virus that shut down the entire planet? Remember when every government on the planet shut down its people, literally locked its people in their houses? Remember when that happened? That's when I started this channel. I started this channel when the entire globe was shut down. Every government on earth was shut down by their governments because of a virus that had gotten loose from a lab in China, or possibly domestically. But when they said it came from a bat thing, I never believed that, and I don't want to relitigate that. But you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so who is remember the main figure behind that, other than Bill Gates? Who's part of the he's got a foundation, a philanthropic foundation that's part of this global system, right? But at the center of that global system is Rome and other places. But we're talking about Rome. We're talking about Rome. We're talking about Washington, D.C. We're talking about the Davos Group. We're talking about London. We're talking about the European Union. That's what I'm talking about. We're talking about Canada and Justin Trudeau. I'm talking about the media in Hollywood. I'm talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about the actors and actresses and musicians in Hollywood and in London, and all the stuff that you grew up listening to and watching on television. That was all run by a program of the Vatican. I'm talking about abortion. I'm talking about gay marriage. I'm talking about LGBT. I'm talking about transgenderism. I'm talking about trans surgeries. This is all under the purview of the Vatican. You're like, but that's not what my Catholic friends that I know, that's not what they believe in. I know that already. You don't think I know that? Of course I know that. I know that Catholics who believe, well, let's see though. Here's where it gets a little fuzzy. Actually, I don't know that. I don't know. I know that the Catholic people I know are against abortion. I could say that. But let's just take the Jimmy Dore show as an example, because I like Jimmy Dore. I watch Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore. The reason I started getting interested in Jimmy Dore's show is because I was interested in his position against the war against Assad in Syria, and also against Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. I wanted to see that end. Now, and also the thing that was going on in Gaza, with killing all the Arabs and stuff over there. Now, here's the thing about it. Everyone can see the Zionist group, right? And kind of oddly enough, Catholics tend to blame evangelicals for that. Catholics tend to blame evangelicals, those crazy Protestants. They're so crazy. Okay, so let's just think of some of these crazy Protestant evangelicals that support Zionism. What about Sean Hannity? What about Steve Bannon? What about, what about Seb Gorka? What about all the people associated with Seb Gorka and associated with Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham? See, I know we want to talk about just the Protestants, and there are, obviously you have these weird Protestant churches that exist, and of course, from my research, they're all connected to the ecumenical system of the Pope. So, but let's not go there yet. Well, let's just take Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity, uber Zionist Catholic. Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity also has. He's also pro gay marriage. He's remember he had during the trans stuff. He's also pro trans. He had who's the trans Republican? The guy used to be an Olympic guy. What's his name? I can't even remember, dude. I can't even keep track of all these people. What was the guy, the runner, the athlete? He was like in the Olympics. And now he thinks, I don't know. I don't even want to say. I could get kicked off YouTube for saying whatever. He's a girl now, I guess. He's like a big, huge guy. But he grew his hair long. And now he says he's a woman. I can't remember, but Sean Hannity had him on his show, right? Sean Hannity had him on his show, the Olympian. And then there's who's the other one? Sean Hannity had that other actor, the guy that the guy from Sean Penn. He had Sean Penn on. Remember, he had Sean Penn, and they were like going, "Hey, man, let's join forces and destroy Russia together," right? So it was like Sean Penn. I believe Sean Penn is Sean Penn Catholic. I don't know. I don't know if he's Catholic. I don't think he's Jewish. But there's just a lot of Catholics that are involved in politics that are pushing this right-left unity thing. Let me give you an example. Notice how Sean Hannity, for instance, argues about the left and the far left, but not the liberals, right? If you ever listen to the Sean Hannity show, the liberals are okay as long as they're like the whatever. It's the far left. They're the bad ones, right? So it's this thing of uniting the right and left towards the center. That is the Vatican Roman system, uniting the right and left towards the center together so that you've got two poles working towards a center. What's at the center? What's at the center is the agenda of the Roman Church. And that includes gay marriage, and that includes abortion, and that includes war with Ukraine, and that includes the Zionist thing. Now, the Zionist thing's a little tricky, but if you notice, and this is what I started to notice, is you have Zionists like Steve Bannon and Sean Hannity as two obvious ones. I can't think of them all right now, but there's a lot of Catholics. Seb Gorka is another one. There's a lot of Catholics that are pro-Zionist Catholics, right? And then you have the anti-Zionist Catholics who are like Jimmy Dore and that whole stuff on the left, like the communists, right? They are communists. They're actual communists. And then they're associated with certain Jews who are anti-Zionist Jews, right? Now, then let me give you an example. And they're like siding with the Muslims and the refugees, because I'm watching Jimmy Dore now that the narratives are kind of changing, things have kind of cooled off. The wars are still going on, but Trump's not like hot and heavy on him, although we'll see what happens. And so now he's talking about, Trump is, he's complaining that Trump is arresting migrants and he's not giving them any due process. He's just arresting them and shipping them out. Well, and so it's like, well, who cares? Like, this is supposed to be our country. This is what we voted for. Can we have a country? We don't have an obligation to foreign people to give them our country, right? That's my viewpoint. We don't have an obligation. Americans do not have any obligation to give away our government and our country and our resources to foreign people, because I can't go anywhere else, right? I can't leave here and go to some other country and go get a job and go buy some land and start a business. I'm stuck here because this is my government. I'm a citizen of this country. So when you give everything away to foreigners, you're taking it away from me, and you're taking away from other Americans, and you're giving it away to foreigners. Now, who's doing that? The Pope. The Roman Church is doing that, because when you take it away from me and you take it away from other Americans, or you take it away from Europeans in Europe and give it to the other people, it's a way to just keep everything in a state of instability so that the Roman Church can control it through its governmental means that it has already established. So the established government doesn't get knocked off. In other words, so you can't change the government, so you can't influence the government because you don't have the resources to do it. You see? So anyway, so now you've got Jimmy Dore and that whole gang who, I mean, I like them, but they're very wrong. And they're complaining about Trump's getting rid of the foreign refugees and asylum seekers and all this and not giving them due process. Now, here's the thing. This explains how we got into this situation. I'll give you another example. When all the noise was going on between Gaza and the Jews, right? And the Jews are slaughtering all the people in Gaza. We're talking about civilians, right? Just mass killing of civilians by the government of Israel, backed by Antony Blinken at the time. and Joe Biden, Jewish and Jesuit, Jewish communist. I don't know if he's a communist. He's a Jewish mafia figure. Anthony Blinken. He's Ukrainian Jewish mafia, and then you've got Joe Biden, the Catholic, who's backed by the Pope, and they're waging the war over there in against the people in Gaza. And then so you had all these Catholics and groups that were backing the refugees and the Arabs and Islam and all this kind of stuff. And I saw this personally where I live in California, because there was at the time, I believe it was on Facebook, there was some advertisement from about what is it? It's like Jewish Voices for Peace. And they were going to meet with the Muslims somewhere in Southern California, right? And I started reading the advertisement. It was like getting people that, inviting people to come and speak out against the violence and this and that. But who was running it? It was Jewish Voices for Peace, I believe, was the name of the group. And it was run by Georgetown University. Georgetown University, a Jesuit school. The first Jesuit school founded in the United States during the dissolution of the Jesuit order. So during the dissolution of the Jesuit order, they established a school in Washington, D.C., what later became Washington, D.C. They established it at Georgetown. And so now this is the group that's organizing the left, you see? And of course, they're tied to the CIA and Mossad. They're organizing the left. They're organizing the anti-Zionist left with Jews. And they're using, and Jews are doing it, or they're using Jews or whatever. See, that gives it a Jewish face. And that says, okay, these are the good Jews on the left. You see, those are the good Jews on the left. If you're a left winger, if you're a communist, if you're a Muslim, these are the good Jews on the left that we're going to organize with. Now, if you're a right winger, you're looking for the good Jews on the right. So Steve Bannon and Alex Jones and Sean Hannity, they're associated with certain Jews, and those are the Zionist Jews. And if you're a right winger, then those are the good Jews on the right, you see? And so this is a way to control both sides. And it's run by the Pope, and it's run by the Jesuits, and it's run by the Vatican, and it's run through Washington, D.C., and through New York, and through Hollywood. That's where it's run. And it's run through Silicon Valley, and it's run through Sacramento with Gavin Newsom, who is a Jesuit. Now, the Jesuit order is a commercial operation. It's a commercial operation. So it's a capitalist operation. And it is a Republican system. In other words, it's anti-monarchy. Communism is anti-monarchy. Republicanism is anti-monarchy. The central banking scheme is anti-monarchy. The monarchs had their own treasury, but the bankers that were outside of that were loaning money to the kings. And so those bankers that were loaning money to the kings, I don't have all the receipts for it, but I'm just looking at what the situation, how it evolved. So you can kind of like look at what it evolved into, and you can kind of piece together some assumptions, which is my assumption, which is that the Jewish banking cartels of the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and the Schiffs were already working with Rome. And that the Jesuits, when they were over in the East, maybe they were already working with somebody else over there. And as things progressed along, maybe they were working with other people over there that were doing other things, like running opium, like running trafficking heroin. And that's why it went from the Sassoons, but I can't put all that together, so I'm not going to try right now. But I do know that the CIA does traffic drugs and has been for a long time, at least in modern times. So now the image that I used on the beginning of this video, if you're watching it on YouTube or possibly Rumble, is an image of Robert Maxwell meeting with Mother Teresa. So Robert Maxwell, who was MI6, Mossad, maybe worked with the CIA too. Probably did. If he's MI6 and Mossad, then he assuredly worked with the CIA. And he's meeting with Mother Teresa in what looks like a fancy hotel or a nice house, like maybe a very expensive home, or maybe a very elaborate penthouse. And Mother Teresa's there, and she's meeting with Robert Maxwell. What does Robert Maxwell do? Well, we know that Robert Maxwell was involved in blackmailing politicians and other people through underage sex acts, just like Jeffrey Epstein and his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell. So Ghislaine Maxwell took over the operation with Jeffrey Epstein from Robert Maxwell, who is her father. That appears to be what happens. That appears to be what did happen. And so Robert Maxwell. When we think of Robert Maxwell, we should think of child trafficking, blackmail operations, blackmailing politicians or other people in business or other people in Hollywood or entertainment, blackmailing them with sex, with underage people, specifically with children. I don't know the ages, but I don't even want to go there. But what does Mother Teresa do, right? Because here we have an image that I'm using on the beginning of the video. We have Mother Teresa meeting with Robert Maxwell. We know what Robert Maxwell does. What does Mother Teresa do? Mother Teresa runs orphanages around the world. See, Mother Teresa runs orphanages around the world where she cares for vulnerable children that don't have any parents. What does Robert Maxwell do? Robert Maxwell blackmails politicians, business leaders, and entertainers with sex, with children. We know that that's what happens because that's what Ghislaine Maxwell does, and that's what Jeffrey Epstein does, and we know that's what they do. And we know that they were involved with the FBI, and they were involved with the CIA, and they were involved in Hollywood, and they were involved with Disneyland, the United Nations. They were involved with the United Nations. There's a lot of people to blackmail at the United Nations, isn't there? Here's the point. I'm watching these guys, and I'm thinking, look, I was just watching Scott Ritter being interviewed by Judge Napolitano. Two people I like. I like Scott Ritter. I like Judge Napolitano. But then Scott Ritter starts going on about how Al Qaeda did 9/11 and stuff. And I'm not here to defend Muslims because, I mean, if you ever hear what I think of Muslims, I'm not gonna go into that again right now. But the fact of the matter is, Al Qaeda has nothing to do with 9/11. That's the dumbest thing. Anyone who thinks that is just an idiot. Like, how can you still believe that? And so I'm noticing, look, there's a lot of these guys in the Patriot media, right? A lot of people we like. I like Dan Bongino. You know, ask him about 9/11, he's going to lie right to your face. I like Scott Ritter. Ask him about 9/11, he's going to lie right to your face. They're both Catholic. I like Jimmy Dore. He doesn't lie about 9/11, but he is not mentioning the Pope. He's mentioning the Zionists, and he's mentioning that angle. But look, they're always talking about, like, let me give you an example. They had Aaron Mate. He's a Jewish guy. He's covering for Jimmy Dore while Jimmy Dore is on tour or whatever, right? And he's got that Kurt Metzger guy. I like that guy too. And then, you know, but they're talking about this and that. And notice how they're always blaming Nazis. Oh, it's the Nazis this and the Nazis that, right? Okay. I mean, there are Nazis in Ukraine. That's true. But I mean, those, as far as I can tell, there's just some people that are National Socialists that are dumb enough to fight for Jews and Jesuits, or they think, I don't know. It's almost like, it's kind of like, you know, it's the same thing with it's kind of like similar with the Al Qaeda thing. I mean, that is real, but they keep blaming that one group of people They're either blaming. Okay, look, they blame Nazis, and then when the Zionists do it, the left wing communist Jewish guys like Aaron Mate say that they're just Nazis, right? Aaron Mate will call Rabbi Shmuley a Nazi, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is kind of what I'm getting to. Aaron Mate, who's on the left, he's part of this left wing cabal. He's a Jewish guy, but he's in there with Jimmy Dore and all this other stuff. I think this is how the Roman Church controls both sides, is what I'm saying. So Aaron Mate goes on all the time, and so he was on with Piers Morgan. He's calling Rabbi Shmuley a Nazi. Rabbi Shmuley is a Jew. Rabbi Shmuley is Jewish, and the things that Rabbi Shmuley does are Jewish. He's doing them because he's Jewish, and that's his religion. He's not. You're calling him a Nazi. And so here's the thing that I've noticed. The left-wing Jews do this. The Muslims do this. The Muslims and the left-wing communist Jews are in some kind of an alliance, right? This is all run by the Pope. The same Pope that's backing Zelensky. The same Pope that through Washington, D.C. and the CIA is running the state of Israel and backing the state of Israel. See, let me put it to you this way. The Pope controls the left through the unions and Antifa and BLM, okay? The Pope controls the right wing through the CIA. And so when you're listening to Sean Hannity, you think you're right wing, so you turn into Sean Hannity. You think you're right wing, so you turn into Buck Sexton and Clay Travis. You think you're right wing, so you tune into Dan Bongino or whatever. You're tuning into the Pope. You're tuning into Rome. You're tuning into the CIA. Now it's almost like that the racist, the people that are inclined towards racial feelings in America or Europe or England are then living vicariously through the Jews in Israel. It's almost like they've set this up on purpose, where you can't, for instance, establish a German state in Germany. That's against the rules. A French ethno-state in France, an English or British ethno-state in the United Kingdom, or an Irish ethno-state in Ireland. Those are all considered Nazi, evil, racist, right? But what I see happening is that through the CIA and through the intelligence services, those people that are inclined towards racial identity or ethno interests are then living vicariously through the state of Israel and through the Jews doing what they're doing. You see, all of that pent up energy on the right is channeled by the CIA, which is controlled by Rome, apparently. You think, does Donald Trump control the CIA? Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. He certainly didn't the first time around. Let's make that clear. Donald Trump had zero control over the CIA during his first term. Zero. In fact, they got rid of him. Then they rigged the election for Joe Biden. The CIA did that. So when Donald Trump got elected the first time, they tried to stop him from being elected by trying to rig the election with all kinds of disinformation. Then when he got in office, they tried to force him out through all kinds of means. Then they instigated riots all over America, the BLM Antifa riots that was all run by the Pope through the unions with the backing of the CIA in Washington, D.C. So that's the CIA. But what are you allowed to do on the right? What you're allowed to do if you have racial or ethnic interests, you are allowed to back the Jews and what they're doing over in the Middle East. You're allowed to do that, nothing else. You're not allowed to support the white people in South Africa or Rhodesia or the South or in America or in Canada or Australia or New Zealand or Germany or France or anywhere or so you're not allowed to do that if you're in Republican politics or European politics for that matter. You're not allowed to do that. You are allowed to support the Jews and their ethno state. The Pope allows that. through his surrogates in the European Union and in London. Now, on the left, you're allowed to. So the left is Antifa. The left is BLM. The left is communism. And they're allowed to do pretty much anything. And then what they do is, because that's all anti-Nazi stuff, then they have Jews that are involved in that. And those are the quote unquote good Jews that work with the left. See, on the right, there's the good Jews that are the Zionists. You're allowed to support them. Then on the left, there's the good Jews that are anti-Zionist. And they're actually run by the CIA and Georgetown University and the Mossad. Let me give you an example. Julie Enney, I believe her name is, was one of the founder. I think she's the founder of Jewish. Yeah, Julie Enney is the founder of Jewish Voices for Peace, right? Left-wing communist anti-Zionist group, right? They're the ones doing all the sit-ins in Washington. They're the ones doing all these big rallies. See, you're allowed to have anti war rallies if you're Jewish. Only if you're Jewish, not if you're right wing. You can't have them if you're. They won't let. If you have a right wing anti-war rally with a bunch of white people or Christians, they will send Antifa to come and attack you, and Antifa will be able to punch you, kick you, throw rocks at you, throw Molotov cocktails at you, burn down your building, kill you, beat you over the head with a bat, with a hammer, and that's all perfectly legal. They won't get arrested. But if you want to have an anti-war rally, then you can have one that's run by the Jews called Jewish Voices for Peace. This is all run by, this is run by the Pope though, and Georgetown University. So if you want to have an anti-war rally, it has to be under the parameters of whatever the Pope and the Jew. So the Pope says that these are the good Jews on the left. And this is all going to be organized by the unions that are controlled by the Pope. The AFL-CIO is run by the Pope. So that's that's like an international union run by the Pope operating here in America. So let me put it another way. America First. America First. You've got a Catholic called Nick Fuentes, and he's got a show called America First, and there's the American First Political Action Committee. Well, let me tell you something. The AFL-CIO, which runs all the unions in America, they are owned by the Pope. And if you don't believe me, do a Google image search, put in Pope, and then put in AFL-CIO. Okay? AFL-CIO Pope. And you will see that the head of the AFL-CIO meets with the Pope. And you will see that BLM Antifa is backed by the unions. It's the unions putting on black masks and going out and burning shit. Or if they're not doing it themselves, they're organizing it, they're part of it, they're running it. So anyway, so what I'm saying is, oh yeah, I was talking about Julie Enney and Jewish Voices for Peace. So Julie Enney founded Jewish Voices for Peace, which is supposed to be an anti-Zionist organization. But it just so happens that she went to a literal Zionist training camp. Okay, when she grew up, she went to a literal Zionist training youth camp. Like, think of it's like a military youth camp for Zionists. That's who founded Jewish Voices for Peace. This is what I'm talking about. This is the scam. Okay, listen what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying I listen to people on the right. I listen to people on the left. I'm watching what everyone's saying. I notice what they're talking about and what they're not talking about. They're not talking about the fact that the Pope is behind and supporting Zelensky. Okay? And then, but the Pope is also supporting all these anti-war things, or the Catholic churches or the Vatican is through certain groups. BLM, Antifa. Okay, let me explain something to you. When Trump ran for office the first time, and then he won, and then you had all these riots going on. Go read what the Pope said about what was it called? Who was the black guy that OD'd on drugs and then they said the cops killed him? What was that guy's name? I can't remember all these people's names, dude. George Floyd. Remember the George Floyd riots? Right. So George Floyd riots, go read what the Pope said and why the Pope said that you should be rioting. So you got to understand something. During the George Floyd riots, the Pope was calling Catholics to go out and join in on the riots for George Floyd because of Donald Trump. That's what the Pope. Look, I'm not going to go through my computer and find all these articles. You have to go look them up. I've already looked through all this stuff. I've already looked through it. The Pope in Rome was vocally saying to Catholics to join the George Floyd riots while American cities were burning. Okay. Kamala Harris went to a Jesuit school. Gavin Newsom is a Jesuit. Karl Marx is a Jesuit. Karl Marx was Jewish. Karl Marx was a Jesuit. Karl Marx was a Republican. Karl Marx was a central banker. They set up a commercial system which is part banking and part communism. And that's how it stays together, by integrating all the people into one mass run by the central bankers. That is the Jesuit system. And so they have a right wing and a left wing. And in that right wing, left wing paradigm of the Jesuit system, you have the center. And so you have the center right and the center left. Now the far right is actually the far right is a threat to the system. The far left is used by the system. The far right is too, I think, now that I think of it, because they are using them in Ukraine. They're using people stupid enough to do that, to go fight for this in Ukraine. So they do use them for that. And they were using them to recruit for Ukraine. I've seen that happening. So they do use that. But they were using the far left. They're more allied with the far left. I guess you could put it this way. I just reminded me of a quote from Harry S. Truman. And he said, if we see that the Germans are winning, we'll back Russia. And if we see that the Russians are winning, if we see that the Russians are winning, we'll back Germany. And if we see that the Germans are winning, we'll back Russia. And in that way, kill as many as possible. Harry S. Truman said that. So, but from my research, it's primarily the Hitler thing was very much an anomaly that had to be stopped. That wasn't part of the program. The Hitler thing was never really part of the program. I think at some point there were some people that thought that they could use Hitler to attack the Russians, but he didn't want to. He wanted to take Austria, and then he took France, and that wasn't part of their plan. Their plan wasn't for Hitler to take Europe. I believe that people that kind of like thought maybe, hey, this Hitler guy, we'll work with him in the beginning. See, before he really came to power. In the beginning, there were some people in global business or whatever, Jewish bankers like the Warburgs and industrialists, Warburgs, Rothschilds. They said, we can, this Hitler guy, he's very anti-Semitic, but we can work with him because we want him to attack the Russians. And we want to have a war between the Germans and the Russians and get a bunch of people killed. So, that'll be good for us, they were saying. And then he's like, why do I want to attack Russians? I want to take Austria. We need to unify Austria. I wrote that in my book. Remember, we got to unify the Germans. We're going to have one Reich, and then we're going to take back all our territories in Poland. We're going to take back Austria. We're going to take back all our territories in France, and we're going to live happily ever after. That wasn't the plan. That was not the plan. Definitely not the plan. So the Hitler thing was an anomaly. Hitler was not a Jesuit. The Jesuits literally conspired to kill Hitler. If you know that movie that came out called Operation Valkyrie, that was a movie about the plot to kill Hitler. But what you don't know is that plot was actually organized by Jesuits. I'm not going to go and look up the names of the people and the Jesuits that were doing it. I know I'm giving you a lot of information. And so you'd have to look up. Look, if you wanted to look it up, you can find it on Wikipedia. It's you'd have to look up Jesuits plan to kill Hitler or Operation Valkyrie Jesuits, and basically what it was is that the Jesuit, there was a Jesuit priest who organized the cabal between socialists and conservatives. See, that's always how they do it. It's conservatives and socialists together. That's the system. The system is conservatives, Rush Limbaugh, Buck Sexton, Clay Travis, whoever, Sean Hannity, and Sean Penn, and whoever, the left, the socialists, right? Look at our government. It's socialists and conservatives working together to form a government. That's the Jesuit system. That's the Jesuit system. It's socialists and conservatives working together to form a government. So when they tried to kill Hitler, I can't remember the names of all these people, but it was a Jesuit. There were Jesuits who organized the conspiracy to kill Hitler, and it was organized with conservative Germans and socialist German groups. See, there were other groups that were still around but not in power, right? They were the Conservative Party and the Socialist Party. So the Jesuits worked with them in a plan to assassinate Hitler, and they made a movie about it called Operation Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, to assassinate Hitler and then bring in this new government that was going to be a bipolar government of conservatives and socialists working together. Well, isn't that what the European Union is? Isn't that what the United States government is? Isn't that what the British government is? Isn't that what all these governments are? They're all like that. See, it's organized around a predetermined system of government where you have conservatives and socialists working together. And this is why it becomes really stupid and obvious to people who actually don't want to be under a communist socialist system of what we have, right? Because you would just look at the conservatives and go, why are you working with them? Why do you keep working with them? Well, because we got to work together with the socialists. We got, I respect the right to blah, 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 blah. See, it's the conservatives working with the left. Look, Ben Shapiro, okay? Will Ben Shapiro debate me? No, because I'm not left. All the people on the right, the conservatives, they debate the left. They want to have a debate with the left. They want to go into communication with the left. They want to come to an agreement with the left. You see, it's about conservatives and socialists working together. And that's why I'm telling you, this is the Jesuit system that was established by the Jesuits. When they sought to kill Hitler, they were going to put this in place. And they did. But they didn't just kill Hitler. They had to kill like a lot of Germans first and bomb the shit out of the whole country and completely destroy Germany and then bring this in. And it's this system that promotes the abortion, the LGBT, all the drug use. It's this system that does, because they don't want another rise of masculine, racially conscious, religiously pure in theology types of people. That's not what they want. They want the obscure mass of nobody knows anything, nobody knows what to do. Everyone just kind of goes along and from one crisis to another, while it's all organized under a very specific design. It's the design that our governments are. So now, the Soviet system was a little different. You can't really compare. Look, here's what I'm saying. Pure Marxism in its purest form, really is the United States of America, England, the European Union. It's the West. It's not what happened in Russia. Even though Russia, I don't even know if that's true what I just said, but it seems kind of true, because Marx was buried in I haven't read Das Kapital, so I don't even know. But I'm just saying Marx was buried in England. He was buried in, I believe, London. There's like a shrine to Karl Marx in London, right? Where did Trotsky escape to? He escaped to Mexico, right? He had to flee to Mexico. So I don't know about that whole thing. But what I'm looking at, as far as the Jesuit system, and Karl Marx was a Jesuit, is that it's conservatives in this ironclad bipolar system run. It's just welded together of conservatives and socialists Marxist socialists. So it's like this. It's like a welded together system that cannot be broken apart of conservatives and socialists, and they're just clinging to each other. And so if you just walk up to a conservative, if you're a right-leaning person, you say, well, why don't you just stop working with the socialists and we'll just dissolve this alliance. We'll dissolve this cooperative that we have with the socialists, right? Like rather than arguing over LGBT or trans surgeries or rather than arguing about girls competing with men, trans men in sports, rather than arguing about that, why not just dissolve the co-op? Why are you still in something with these people? Like, look at Lindsey Graham. How many of the far left judges were appointed through a process that was screened by Lindsey Graham, right? Mr. Zionist warmonger, never seen a war he didn't like for Israel. But see, this is what I'm saying. You're allowed to live vicariously through the Jews if you're on the right. You're allowed to all of your pent up racial feelings are allowed to be lived out through this small little channel called the Jews in Israel and what they're doing. So all your racism has to be focused through this channel called Zionism. You're not allowed to have your own stuff. You're not allowed to have your own country. You're not allowed to be Rhodesia. You're not allowed to be South Africa. You're not allowed to be Germany for Germans. You're not allowed to be Ireland for Irish people. So like, this is what I'm saying. These same left-wingers, they're all allied with the refugees. They're allied with the immigrants. They're allied with Black power groups. Like I'm listening to Jimmy Dore, and he's got this white guy, left-wing guy, going on and on about Black power and Black right. It was almost weird. Like, dude, you're a white guy and you're obsessed with Black social movements. What is wrong with you? Like, why is that your obsession? Like, how are the Blacks doing? Like, I care about Black people like I care about everybody else, but I'm not obsessed with how the Blacks are getting along. You know what I mean? That's not an obsession of mine. It's just weird. It's very weird, but it is an obsession of the Pope, and it's an obsession of the left. So if you look at the whole Martin Luther King thing that the Republican Party fully embraced, right? What did they do? Rather than having Blacks just be violent towards the white people, they had to form some kind of new system. So what they did was they would ship Blacks because the whites didn't want to race mix with the Blacks. Particularly in the South where there was a large Black population. The whites down there said, hey, look, you guys just do your own thing. We're going to do our own thing. We got our own neighborhoods and stuff. We like it this way. We have our own schools, and we're just going to do our own thing. You do your thing. We'll do our thing, okay? And these are working class white folks. There's no reason for them to race mix. There's no reason for them to send their kids to school with Blacks. Like, there's no reason to. Like, there's no point in doing that. There's no reason to do that. That's not hurting Black people. That's not enslaving Black people. Like not sending your kid to go to a school with a bunch of Blacks, because we all know what happened. Look, I know what happened. I know people that grew up during that, and when they went to school, they got beat up by the Black kids. That's exactly what happened. They went to school and they got attacked. They got punched and beaten up by the Black kids, the people that lived out there. That's what happened. And so you're sending your kid to school, your little white kid to go to school to go get beat up and beat up by gangs of Blacks. That's what happens. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, anybody who's been to a Black neighborhood knows that if you're white and you're in a Black neighborhood, you better not do anything stupid, because there's a good chance you're going to get killed or shot or robbed or beaten up because you are white and because you are there. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. So now the way to get around this was they would ship the Blacks into the white neighborhoods, and then they would bring news cameras, right? So they would ship in some Blacks to, like, there's white people just like living out. There's like white people living by themselves, not bothering anyone. There's no Black people around, and if there are, they're probably nice to them, right? They're like nice to the one or two Black people they see once in a while. But other than that, they're just living out there. They're doing their own thing. They're living their lives, right? Living normal lives, So the federal government that's run by the Jesuits has to send in blacks to their neighborhoods and march down the street. Do you see how militant that actually is? Oh, we're so peaceful. And they're singing their peace songs and, oh, we're all brothers as they're marching down the street in your neighborhood. See, that is a very what do you call it? It's a provocation. It's called a provocation. It's a provocation to war or provocation to violence. It's a way to provoke people. So the idea, and this is an actual method, a psyop used by the CIA in war, by the Pentagon today, used in Iraq, used in Afghanistan, used all over the place, to provoke a response, to provoke a violent response. This is what they did with the Russians. They provoked a violent response with using the Ukrainians. This is something the CIA does. So they bring the blacks in, and then they march them down the street, which is provoking the people that live there. Like, it's their street. They all live there. It's their street. Here you have people that get bussed in and then march around in your neighborhood as a show of force. So then they bring the TV cameras, and then the white people come out and they start fighting with them. They're like, get out of here. We don't want you here, right? So it starts a big fight, and then there's violence. And then the violence, because there's a lot of white people there, and they haven't been domesticated yet, so they're still ready to actually start throwing punches. So they go out, they start with the punches and the fire hoses, and the dogs and the police come out and everything. And so that's all put on video, and then that video of the white people attacking the blacks is then broadcast across America, and people go, "Oh man!" See, then they see that one part of it. Oh, those blacks they were just being peaceful. I saw them. They were just walking down the street, and then the white guys just started attacking them. Well, they weren't just walking down the street. They got shipped in, and then they provoked a violent response on purpose. That was the plan. That was the plan. Where did this plan come from? This plan came from the Jesuit system. Martin Luther King was backed by the Pope, backed by the Republican Party, backed by the Communist Party, which are all the same thing. Backed by the Rockefellers, that's the Republican Party. Martin Luther King was sponsored by the Rockefellers, the Republican Party, to provoke the whites into violence, to bring in this new system of integration and race mixing. So, but what I'm saying is, the Rockefellers, the bankers, the industrialists, those are all powerful groups that are in this hub or network of Rome, of the Roman system. Washington, D.C. is part of that system because Washington, D.C. was founded by the Pope, was founded by the Americans on land donated by the Pope under Bishop Carroll, Jesuit Bishop Carroll. Understand something, that Georgetown University was founded during the time that the Jesuit order had been dissolved. The Jesuit order had been dissolved. And in America, they have founded a Jesuit school. While during the time that the Jesuit order has been dissolved, they found a Jesuit school in Georgetown University, or called Georgetown University, in Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia. That's who runs Washington, D.C. That's who founded it. That's who runs it. That's why you have judges all across America that are trying to block Donald Trump from deporting illegal migrants back to El Salvador or Venezuela or wherever. You've got violent prison gangs running drugs, trafficking people, coming into the United States. They're backed by the Pope. They're backed by the judges who are agents of the Pope. The unions, AFL-CIA, is an operation of the Pope. It's an agency of Rome operating in the United States. The CIA is an agency of Rome operating in the United States. So if you really want to make America great again, if you really want to have Liberation Day, because today is Liberation Day, and I support what Donald Trump is doing because he's trying to change put this back together. He's trying to bring our economy back for workers. I agree with that. I support that. And I'm not even necessarily against the idea of people unionizing. On some I've never been a part of a union necessarily. I've never really wanted to. All the guys that I know who weren't in the union were all really good laborers and made way more money. But I mean, whatever. My problem is it's run by a group tied to the Pope. The AFL-CIO is an agency of Rome, a foreign entity. So we all like to talk about Israel and the Zionist lobby and AIPAC and how they're influencing our government. And it's right to notice that, and it's right to be alarmed by that. But what I'm saying is that the Pope and the Vatican, and they have all kinds of agents all across America. They've got judges trying to protect migrants, judges working to protect illegal migrants, including MS-13, including these violent Venezuelan gangs. Those are all being protected by the Jesuit judges that were established by the Pope. The AFL-CIO, all these the Catholic Charities that organizes the child trafficking. That's what I'm talking about. They're working with the Hebrew Immigration Association or whatever it's called. So yeah, there's Jews and then there's Jesuits, and they're working together to screw over America. I don't know why it's like that, but that's the way it is. And so that's what I'm trying to say. You have all these judges. Okay, why do you think the judges are blocking Donald Trump from deporting illegal immigrants? That's his job. That's literally his job. See, if people don't hear what I'm saying, at least think about it and consider this what I'm saying. We're not going to be able to fix this problem, and then we're still going to have it. Like if you don't know where the shots are being fired, when you're in a war, right? What happens? You're in a war, and the guy starts shooting at you from a far distance, right? Oh, the shots are coming from over here. Well, maybe the shots are coming from two different directions. Maybe one of those directions is the Zionist organization, and the other one is over here. And these are not Jews. These people answer to the Pope, is what I'm saying. Sean Hannity. If you listen to Sean Hannity and all you hear about and all of his Zionist stuff, you think he must work for the Jews. He must just get paid by the Jews. He must be controlled or blackmailed by the Jews. Maybe he is, or maybe he answers to an agenda that he agrees with, which has to do with the Roman system, because he's Catholic. And Steve Bannon. Has Steve Bannon come out and said that Larry Silverstein blew up the World Trade Center? Why not? I mean, Larry Silverstein did not blow it up. I'm not saying Larry Silverstein did. I'm saying Larry Silverstein had the contract for the World Trade Center when it blew up. Like he was involved in something shady. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Dan Bongino. Does Dan Bongino say what happened on 9/11? Does Sean Hannity say what happened on 9/11? Does Steve Bannon say what happened on 9/11? That's what I'm saying. There's just a lot of Catholics that you and I like that are lying or covering things up. And some of them are on the right and some of them are on the left. And then when I look at the organizations associated with the left that are run by the left-wing Jews that are associated with people like Aaron Mate and the Gray Zone, and who's that other Jewish guy? I don't know. There's like the anti-Zionist left-wing Jews, the left-wing Jews that are in the media and in politics and like the social. They're not even Democrats. They are actual communists. They're the social democrats or communists. The Bernie Sanders guy. You know that Bernie Sanders spoke in Congress with a big picture of Pope Francis right next to a picture of, look up Bernie Sanders, Pope Francis. Do a Google image search. Do a Google image search. Use Google. Bernie Sanders, Pope Francis. Michael Moore, Pope Francis. Do Nancy Pelosi, Pope Francis. Joe Biden, Pope Francis. Do Pope Francis BLM. Do Jesuits BLM. That's what I'm saying. Antifa, right? Antifa people think, oh, Antifa is Jewish because it started in Germany by the Jewish communists and was led by a Jewish guy, and he's Jewish. So that means Antifa is Jewish. And maybe Antifa is Jewish, but it's also run by the Pope. That's what I'm saying. The Pope runs Antifa. The Antifa is there to bully you on the street if you don't like the agenda of Rome that goes through Washington, D.C. Now, notice, look, I've said a lot here. If you go to, and here's the mistakes people make. If you go to any website that talks about the Jesuits, all they're going to say is that Adolf Hitler was a Jesuit. Adolf Hitler was not a Jesuit. Adolf Hitler was not a Jesuit. Karl Marx was a Jesuit. The Jesuits tried to kill Adolf Hitler. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Antifa is there's a lot of Jewish leadership in Antifa, and Jews are involved in Antifa. But Antifa appears to be an agency of the Vatican to bring because here's what'll happen. When you set up the conservative versus social left, you got the Tories versus the Labor. That's the system. It's the system in US. Republicans versus, they call them Democrats, but they really should call them socialists, because the party of Andrew Jackson and Thomas Jefferson is gone, right? The Democrats were the white Christian, literally like the Democrat Party was the Andrew Jackson white nationalist Christian party. Is that the Democratic Party? No, that's not. We're still calling it that because it was taken over by this system. The system that ran the Republicans, defeated the Democrats in a war, and then through Washington, D.C., progressively dissolved whatever that was. Whatever Andrew Jackson set up, that's all gone. Okay, that's all dead. Now you have LGBT BLM running that. So that's the Jesuit system. Okay, and that's what we call the Democrats now. Why? Because we're stupid. We're all stupid. That's why we call them the Democrats. We're calling the party of Andrew Jackson. We're calling that now whatever this thing is. Now that's Hakeem Jeffries. You think Andrew Jackson would allow Hakeem Jeffries in his party? Andrew Jackson was a white supremacist. Andrew Jackson was a white supremacist. That was the party of, and that's the Democrat Party, is the party of white supremacy. They lost the Civil War. Who did they lose it to? They lost it to Abraham Lincoln and his group, which was well, part of it was the Jewish mafia that was in was it Ohio or Illinois? Quincy House, Illinois. Abraham Jonas was the name of one of them. He was a Jewish Freemason lawyer working with Abraham Lincoln. But the other part of it was that Abraham Lincoln was a communist, or he was an associate of Karl Marx. This is the thing. This is why I'm saying that what happened in America may have been a purer form of communism than they actually really had in Russia. Because what was established in Russia that we call communism was established by the United States. The United States established a proxy government in Russia called the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. That was established by the United States, by the Republican Party in New York and Washington, D.C. They established, and Chicago, they established the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. They established it. I know you don't believe me because you haven't read the articles, and I can't post articles on YouTube. I can just tell you, and I can tell you where to find them because it's all recorded. It's all recorded. But so Karl Marx and Abraham, that's why it's making me think that this system that we have is actually a pure form of Marxism. Because what happened with the Civil War is that Abraham Lincoln was a Marxist. Abraham Lincoln was also very closely tied to the Jewish mafia through the Freemason mafia of B'nai B'rith. And so what happened was they brought in, there were German communists that were former members of the aristocracy that then flipped over to become Republicans. And they were trying to overthrow the German government, right, in what was called the 1848 revolt. And it was a failed revolt. It was a Marxist revolt led by people who were disciples of Karl Marx. And it wasn't just Karl Marx. There were other people that came out of this school in a Jesuit school in Germany. And it was Karl Marx and a group of his schoolmates from a Jesuit school that organized this revolt. And I don't know their names. I should find their names. But they're very mysterious figures. Nobody really even knows who they are. I don't even know. It'll probably be difficult to find their names. Their names are available. I just don't remember what they are, but I could look them up. But so Karl Marx, who was a Jew, went to a Jesuit school because he was a convert. I guess someone in his family, I don't know, either they converted or they just sent him to a Jesuit. It's common for Jews to go to Catholic schools, I think. I don't know because I didn't go to a Catholic school. But it's common, I think, for Jews to go to Catholic schools for some reason. So Karl Marx went to the Jesuit school and was indoctrinated into a Jesuit program. And then he and a bunch of his schoolmates organized the 1848 revolt to overthrow the German government and bring in a republican system. Republican, right? This is the Illuminati that took over the Masonic order and started the whole Republican movement first in the colonies in 1773, actually, the Boston Tea Party revolt through Freemasonry. That was the Illuminati through Freemasonry. The Jesuits working through Freemasonry started a revolt, established Washington, D.C., through Freemasonry, through the Illuminati, through Freemasonry, the Jesuits. And then Karl Marx in 1848 starts a revolt to try, because they overthrew the King of England. Then they overthrew the King of France. Then there were all these other revolts. They were trying to bring in this new order. It was a new order of the Jesuits because they were getting rid of the kings. They were bringing in a new system. And this is the system that we inherited. They're bringing in a new system. That system was not going to be run by the kings. It was going to be run by the way it's run now. Exactly how it's run now is how it was planned. And so Karl Marx, they tried to overthrow the German king and failed. Those failed communist revolutionaries were then brought over to America as the Union Army, and some of them were leaders of the Union Army, like there were generals or just fighters in the Union Army. I can't remember all their names right now. Forgive me. I've been working all day, and I haven't had dinner yet. But so there was a general. It'll probably come to me. General of the Union Army, and he was a communist revolutionary from Germany. And then now they are using communist revolutionaries that were the failed revolutionaries in 1848 revolution. Now they're fighting the South. Now they're fighting Americans. That's the point. It was a war using people in the North, but they didn't have enough people to fight the South. So now they're importing people from Europe, from Germany, right? They didn't have enough people to fight the South in the North. There weren't enough people in the North to fight the South. So they had to import people from Germany, communists from Germany, as revolutionaries to fight against the South, to fight the Americans. So now you have the North fighting the Americans and using basically mercenaries, communist mercenaries. This is the design, isn't it? Isn't this the design that they've been using ever since? This is the design they've been using ever since, because this is the same design they used to take out the Tsar in Russia. And then this is the design they used with a new twist on it. Instead of communists, it's Islam through Al-Qaeda and ISIS. You see? Now, this is what was the name of that general? He was a general in the Union Army, communist German. I can't remember his name. There were a few of them, and they were imported from Germany. They came down and they fought the Americans. They fought the Americans for Abraham Lincoln and Karl Marx to bring in the new government. which was established at the end of the Civil War. And so that's the system we've been in ever since. And that's the system that then brought in the Federal Reserve Bank. So we got a central bank. And then we got the new system of civil rights instead of natural rights, which occur naturally and come from God, come from the Creator, right? That was the idea that the founders had. See, that's gone. They had to bring in this new system. And then this new system, you have civil rights, and these are things that the government gives you. And of course, the civil rights all are oriented around fighting white people and imposing interracial this and that integration. And then it just kept progressing into gay marriage, and then gays adopting babies, and then transhumanism. It's a really weird thing, but it's an anti-human thing. So it became transhuman, but it's masked in humanity. It's an anti-human agenda because humans are ethnocentric. Humans care about their ethnicity. It's just a human trait to be like, I'm an ethnicity. I have an ethnicity. We all care about each other. We have our own whatever. We have our own culture. See, that's a human trait. So it's actually anti-human. In the name of humanity, they have to fight that. So then they fought that first. Then they fought normal sexual relations between men and women. Actually, it's not even. It started with the race mixing stuff. Okay, look, when you watch these rock and roll 1950s, right? When you see rock and roll in the 1950s, that's the church. That's the new religion they're giving you. It's called rock and roll. So see, the church is actually theatrical, and not just the Catholic Church or any Roman Christian church, but any type of religious institution is theater. That's why the word theos is in it. It's theater, and so that's how the religion is transmitted into society through theatrics. Theatrics. It's theatrical. So when you're watching rock and roll bands being broadcast on television, and it's like whoever, whether it's Elvis swinging his hips or it's black guys swinging their hips and singing rock and roll about kissing, making love, understand that is the new religion. That is the new church. See, that is the thing. It's very commercial because it's very exciting and it's going to generate lots of money. See, it's going to generate money, but it's also going to create a certain type of culture. And so here, all of the inhibitions are breaking loose. It started with the rock and roll and promiscuity. See, it starts with promiscuity, and in race. So it starts with race mixing and promiscuity through the rock and roll music, and then it devolves into race mixing, promiscuity, and LSD in the 1960s. So it went from 1950s to 1960s. Why did Albert Pike give a crap about predicting and guiding future world wars? I don't know. That's a good question. It's interesting because I don't even know. I haven't read a lot of that Albert Pike stuff, but I found it odd that. See here, let me just tell you. I suspect that maybe some of the Albert Pike stuff was actually written later, and that it might be a hoax. I don't know if everything is a hoax, but maybe some of it, because he uses the word Nazi. He uses the word Nazi when he's writing about the world wars, and he's writing this before World War II. When did he live? I think he was around in the 1800s, and he's using the word Nazi. So that was a little suspicious to me when I read that. Somebody pointed that out to me, and they're like, "Why does it say Nazi here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why does it say Nazi?" So I don't know if Albert Pike really wrote that or what. It may be a hoax. I'm not sure, actually. I don't know. That's what you thought too. Seriously, yeah. When I saw Albert Pike using the word Nazi, look, Nazi really was a word invented by the enemies of National Socialism, so it didn't exist yet. But what the heck? What was I talking about? I was talking about the something. Shoot, I gotta go make money. Propaganda. Right. So they started with rock and roll, right? And then because I was just watching, you go back and you look at the 50s. Oh, the 50s, those were such an innocent times. I'm watching it. I just saw this. I was like watching YouTube this morning before work, and there were like these black dudes, and they're like swinging their hips and singing songs, and they're this is the 50s, right? Imagine it's 1950, everything's segregated, but now you've got blacks on TV, but they've got their hair combed, and then they're like swinging their hips, and then Elvis was doing the same thing. So it started with that, and then so then you get into the 1960s, and that's when they hit America with LSD. And then if you notice all the music, and a lot of the music that I grew up thinking, oh, I like this music, but you think about it, and it was all designed to get you into the cult and to take the drugs and go down this path. So they invented LSD. It was somebody in Switzerland. I can't remember his name. Albert Hoffman was I believe he was a chemist that invented or discovered LSD. He synthesized LSD. And so then this was adopted by the CIA and MI6, because you can go back and you can see Army experimentation in the 50s. So in the 1950s, they're experimenting on soldiers with LSD. Then in the 60s, they're spreading LSD in America. Who's spreading it? The CIA and the other intelligence services in UK and Europe. So imagine this. You have the CIA and British intelligence. First, they're experimenting on soldiers, then they release it to the population, and then they push it through the music. So what I was saying is that the music, all the music that you see, everything that you see in Hollywood, all the movies, I mean, some of them are good or whatever, but I'm just saying, all the movies, all the entertainment, all of the TV programming, that's all run literally by the CIA in Hollywood. Hollywood's run by the CIA. It's not separate. People think that it's separate. It's not. The movie studios are all bankrolled by the CIA through probably drug money, a lot of it, but it's all run by the CIA. They have there's actually institutes that work within the movie studios that tell them what to put in their movies as part of the narrative in their movies. But I don't want to get into all that. I'm sure you can see it, but you can see it more clearly. So it started with the promiscuity, and then the drugs, and then all the LGBT, and then now you have the adopting stuff and the trafficking, the Dave Rubin stuff. I'm not going to go into that. Nobody wants to hear about that. It's bad. But anyway, that's what they did. But it's like, who did that? Well, look at who supports it. Gavin Newsom supports it. Nancy Pelosi supports it. Joe Biden supported it. Justin Trudeau supports. Like, you keep seeing like these people that support it, and they're all Jesuits, and they're all connected to the Roman system. And then you see all the people that you think should be opposing it, but they're not really. They're just saying, well, I don't support that, but I'm not actually, it's not important enough for me to actually do anything. That's what I'm saying. Like, look, here's another example. And I like the Republicans. Okay, I don't want to harp on them too much, but so they pass a law, for instance, that says people under 18 can't get a trans surgery. You think, well, that's great. Now the kids won't be getting their trans surgeries. And that is great, except what that law does is it establishes at the same time that if you're over 18, you can. So you got 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds who are mentally ill having their genitals cut off and having their breasts cut off. And literally having a doctor in a hospital who's some kind of a ghoul do this to them. And it's legal. That's the problem. See, by the Republicans, the conservatives, see, we're conservative. We don't want to go too far in any direction. By the conservatives making a law that says it's illegal for somebody under the age 18 to dismember their body. Well, by that very same law, it's legal if you're over 18. So they've legalized it. They've legalized. You got to understand, these people are mentally ill, and they're being hacked up by the most ghoulish people in the world that run these hospitals. This is like Frankenstein shit. It's it's vile. It's horrifying that anyone would. Who would do this to another human being, right? I couldn't. If someone came to me and said, "I want you to chop me up," I wouldn't do it. But see, they would do it. That these people are very evil. It's like a satanic. It's beyond. It's beyond anything. It can only be described as satanic. And so that's where this is led. Transhumanism. Transhumanism. So I'm gonna end off because I'm starving. I gotta go at my dinner. I really appreciate you watching my video. At some point, the Roman system basically figured out a way to secularize their religion because it was a commercial system. It was set up as a commercial system in the beginning, and they originally set it up with Christianity as the vanguard of their commercial system, and then go eat a yam. It's yam time. I'm actually going to have some slow cooked chicken, but and with carrots and garlic. But so they had the Roman system, which was originally set up through commercialism in the very beginning, then adopted Christianity as the vanguard or face of that commercialism, then turned it into this new Marxist transhumanist system that we have now. And so what I'm saying is the memes that you're seeing from DC, from the left and from the right, also through the media channels, through the CIA, through all the CIA, FBI, Hollywood, New York channels, that meme comes from or is organized through the Roman system that's authorized by the Pope. Trump does seem to be bucking that system, does seem to be a threat to that system, but not nearly enough for my taste. We could do a lot more. And with that, I'll end off. I appreciate you watching. Have a good night.